Hi, thanks. Hi, thanks for bringing me up. I'm 41.
Awesome. How long have you been a Christian?
Uh, I don't know, maybe my whole life, about 40 years.
For sure. And what on the background would you
How,
like to
how
talk
long have
about?
you been atheist?
Uh, let's see. Probably about 7-ish years.
7 years.
Mm-hmm.
Could I ask how old you are now?
I'm 30.
Okay. I, okay.
So what on the background
Sure.
would you like to
So,
talk about?
well, I see your thing. No, yeah, I don't. You're not 30 for sure. But in your,
Then I
do you
definitely
believe
am,
there's such
but
thing as
okay.
right and wrong?
Why do you think I'm lying about my age?
Okay. Do you because you sound like a fetus with shoes?
Okay, but I am 30.
Sure. Whatever you
So
identify as.
just because you think I sound a certain way, what if I said you sound 60?
Yes.
So does that mean you're 60?
Okay. Then I would say that. Okay. Sounds about right.
So you're actually 60?
Maybe.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe you're lying about your
I
age,
could
but I'm
be.
not.
Yeah.
So what on the background would you like to talk about?
I might be. Yeah. Why is gay wrong?
Yeah, can you explain to me why the Bible considers it an abomination? What's wrong about being gay?
Why does the Bible do it?
Yes, these are questions about the Bible.
Because the first commandments. Yeah. Because of the first commandment God gave to man.
To name all the animals on earth?
You know what that first commandment would be?
Yes, he told man to name all the animals on earth. That was the first thing he
No.
told man to do.
Do you know what the first commandment God gave to man was?
Yes, to name all the animals on earth. That is what happened before Eve was
No.
around to
Way
be
before
fruitful.
that.
Okay.
Way before
Okay, sure,
that.
sure. Show me where in the passage. I'll open up my
Can you
Bible right
guess
now.
what the first commandment? Think hard about the Bible in Genesis.
Yeah, I
What's
know.
the
I've
first
I've got
commandment
it open
God
right now.
gave to man?
I've got
Okay,
Genesis open
what do
right
you
now.
think it
What verse?
was?
What verse am I looking for? Come on, tell me.
Oh, you could go to the beginning. What is the first commandment God gave to man? What will you
I
think?
answered you.
What your answer was naming the animals, and that's wrong.
Yes,
It's before that.
the very first thing that God told man to do was to name the animals. You are asking about
No, it's before
what the
that.
answer the
I'm
okay.
telling you that's wrong, and
Okay.
I'm telling you it's before
So
that.
then give me the verse.
So if it's before that, it's no longer that.
So
So
then
the
give me
first
the verse.
commandment God gave to man, I'll help you out here. I'll
Mhm.
help you out. The
Mhm.
first commandment God gave to man was
Mhm.
be fruitful and
You're incorrect. That's the
and
second thing he said. And if you had actually let me
be
speak,
fruitful
you would
and
have heard me address your be fruitful and multiply. That is the second thing he told man. Because the very first thing he said
oh, what happened before that?
In Genesis chapter 2, starting
Uh
in
huh.
verse 18,
Uh
it
huh.
says, "Then the Lord God said, It
Uh
is not
huh.
good that man should be alone. I will make him a helper fit for
Uh
him."
huh. Uh
Now out
huh.
of the ground the Lord
Uh
God had
huh.
formed every beast of the field and every bird of the heaven, and brought them to the man to
Uh
see what he
huh.
would call them.
Uh
And the man
huh.
called them a living creature.
Uh huh.
So what is happening here?
Uh huh.
What is happening
Oh,
here?
where was the commandment there?
What is
Was there a
happening here?
commandment given there?
Tell me what
I
is
didn't
happening
hear a
here.
commandment. Did you hear one?
Okay, that's okay.
Did you
I'll
hear
tell
a
you the context.
commandment?
So God is looking for a helper
Did you
for
hear a
man, and
commandment, Mr.
he
Atheist?
brings all
Mr.
the animals and
Atheist, did you
says,
hear a
"Adam,
commandment
name
in
the
there?
animals." And so Adam names all the animals. They
Did
go
you?
through all the
Oh,
animals, and
Did
then they
Adam say
see.
naming the animals? Is that a
Excuse you.
commandment?
Are you here for a conversation or not?
Naming the animals a commandment?
Yes, that's the first thing he tells
No, it's not,
man.
is
Everything
it?
that God says to
Is it?
do is a command, is it not?
It's not a commandment, is it?
So when God tells you to do something, God isn't
When
commanding you to
God
do it.
says tend to the field, it's not a commandment,
That's
is it?
literally the command that
What
man has.
what
Is
is
to
a
that
what is
that's their
a
purpose that has been
atheist?
given to
What
them.
is a commandment? Maybe you're stuck on you don't know what a commandment
It's
is. What
something
is a
that you ought
commandment?
do.
No. What is
Yes.
a commandment?
So again, how does this show that homosexuality
What?
is
No,
wrong?
quit avoiding. Stop avoiding. What is a
Actually,
commandment?
I'm not. I'm trying to stay on topic. We are getting far from
So
the
answer
topic.
my question.
So
What is a
I
commandment?
answered you already. So are we going to get
No,
back
you
to the topic, or
didn't.
are you going to try to
You
waste time
didn't
still?
answer. What is a
It's
commandment?
something
Let's
you
be
ought
good
to
faith.
do.
No, that's not
Okay,
correct.
then you can disagree. Now let's
What
get
is
back to
a
the topic. Why is
commandment? What
homosexuality
is a
wrong?
commandment?
I already answered your question. If you
You
disagree,
don't
fine.
know.
Now,
You
why is
don't
homosexuality
know.
wrong? It's something that you ought to do. Okay. Oh my God. Anyway, so the very first thing that God tells Adam to do is to name all the animals. And then it isn't until after that that Eve comes about, and then they are given the be fruitful and multiply. So, look, if we really want to get technical, there is nowhere where he says, I command you to be fruitful and multiply. But what we do see the first command is in Genesis chapter 3, starting in verse 11, where he says something that have you eaten from the tree that I have commanded you not to eat. Oh my gosh, look at that. So if he's trying to look, oh, I'm sorry. If he's trying to look for where does it say a command, the first quote unquote command that God gave was about eating the fruit, which you can see in Genesis 3, chapter 11, and you can see in Genesis 2, starting in 15. So in verse 15 in Genesis 2, it says, The Lord took Adam in the garden and put him and commanded the man, saying, You may surely eat of every tree in the garden, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat of it. So he has no idea what he's talking about. The first commandment God gave man was not be fruitful and multiply. And technically, even I was a little incorrect. It was about the tree. It was do not eat from the forbidden tree. So Greg has no idea what he's talking about. His whole thing of, homosexuality is bad because be fruitful and multiply has so many holes in it, and look at how he just could not get back onto topic. Oh boy, he's a block on site for no. It's all right. Sometimes you just gotta let them show how ignorant they are on it and how unwilling they are to hear. Because again, we could have gone through these verses together and we could have come to the understanding that yes, the first commandment that is given to man is not to eat from the tree. And then the second thing that God tells man is to name the animals. And then after Eve is around, we get to the be fruitful and multiply. Yeah, I remember talking to him recently, and I think once like forever ago, but I don't know. I think one time we were able to have a conversation for a little bit, but yeah, Paul said not to have kids. Didn't Jesus even say something about like not even getting married or something? They truly believed that the time was close. Hey, how you doing?
Yo, yo.
Are you over the age of 18 and are you a Christian?
Yeah, I'm 21 and I don't really see myself in anything. Um,
Do you
the
believe
only
in
reason
God?
somewhat.
Okay,
I say
well,
somewhat.
I'm looking to talk to Bible believers and Christians, so I'll let you say your
I
piece,
understand.
but I'm just looking to have a conversation with them.
Okay, you said why you do you mean like being like gay and stuff like this gay is wrong? Like what?
Yeah.
My
I'm talking
perspective
about
on
it from
that.
more of a biblical perspective, but if you want to answer it, go for it.
I mean, on my perspective on what's in nature, what occurs in nature, like homosexuality exists with animals all the time, you know. But as I truly see it, like I feel like that if it comes to intercourse, I feel like that it's not. I would say it's like I won't say a bad thing, but I say it's more of an error that they shouldn't do it. Because I believe that intercourse only belongs if you want, only is made for if you want to procreate. You know,
Why?
and you can't procreate with your own sex.
But why? I feel like there's multiple reasons for intercourse. It could be
And it
to
probably is some
procreate.
days
It could
pleasure.
be as a stress relief. It could be as a way to express your love for that individual. There's so many different things that people use intercourse for. So clearly, we use it for more than just reproduction, and all those reasons
Well,
are natural.
obviously, some people
So
obviously like
what's wrong with it?
people use it for pleasure, but people use a
Sure,
lot of things for pleasure though, other than just touching a pee pee. You
sure,
know,
but it doesn't make it wrong just because it's for pleasure and not making another baby.
I see it as more as an error
Why?
because like if you're going to do it inside I would say a butthole, right, and a man's behind, whatever. That like really like even scientists say like it's not really meant for your behind, and you gonna make the G spot argument, which honestly I didn't really get more to that, but really you're not really supposed to put your ding ding in the in the butt hole,
Okay,
it's not meant for
you're
that.
not really supposed to put your tongue in someone else's mouth because human mouths are
Obviously that's
disgusting.
weird too.
And yet people do that, and we don't at all say, ew, gross,
We do a
immoral,
lot of things that
errors,
we're not really
whatever the case
supposed to.
is. So if you can do it in a safe and healthy manner, you care about your hygiene, you care about the safety and the comfort of everybody else, then what is the issue? How is it an error? How is it wrong? Should it be in any way, what's
Like
the
I
word I'm
said,
looking for?
I just see intercourse as a procreation
Discouraged.
thing. Now, of course, that's all I see it as.
Hmm.
And like yes, we
So
grew up
so
in a
so you
society
so
that
you
now.
personally would never have sex unless you're trying to have a baby?
No, I would not agree with that. No, no, most definitely I use it for pleasure too. But that's not my point though.
Okay,
I'm not gonna agree with what I'm
you
saying.
don't
Like I'm
agree
not
with
gonna
that.
truly go with what I'm saying. I do agree with it, but I'm not gonna go with what I'm saying. I'm just using as I see it in reality or nature or whatever. Like, I just see it in a more realistic stance on that.
All right. I think one of my guests has a question for you, and then we'll drop because I have another guest waiting
Okay, that's fine.
in the queue. So, Queen, you had
And you can
a
call me a
question for
hypocrite.
him?
I'm not a hypocrite at all.
No,
So
I was just I
never
wanted to ask.
claimed, huh?
Okay. Did you not say that just sex is for procreation only?
Yes, but I never claimed that I will follow in that. Never claimed that.
Oh, that's fine. So my question is, women who go through menopause should never have sex again then?
They how would they be like for in a older age, right?
It doesn't matter. If they went through menopause, should they never have sex again?
I mean, if you really think about it, like I said, I'm not gonna say they should or shouldn't. Like I'm thinking as a in a nature's perspective, not
Okay,
in a societal perspective.
but you have
But
stated. Hold on. But I'm going off of what you
if
stated.
if the person doesn't know, then that's a hard question. Actually, that is a hard question.
You had stated that sex was only for procreation.
No,
Yet when
yeah, I'll stand on that. Yeah.
Okay. Yet when a woman goes through menopause, they cannot procreate anymore. So
Hmm.
should she not have sex? I don't
I think
understand.
so.
This is a hard question.
Uh, do they still have their hormones still like still
Not
boosting them
procreate.
to want to have intercourse, right?
They could not procreate.
I know, but do they still get horny?
Yes.
Mm, I don't know though. That's actually not an easy question to ask. I gotta think about
I have
that
a
part.
question.
Your
If a
original
man
statement.
shoots blanks, should he not be allowed to have intercourse?
I mean, it won't do nothing. It won't work. So
So
it's
he
pointless
shouldn't
to
have
have sex
sex.
unless you want to use it for pleasure.
So he shouldn't have sex because he shoots blanks.
I won't say he shouldn't.
But according
Shouldn't is a vague
But it should be
word.
discouraged. It should be discouraged because he can't reproduce.
I would say it would be unnecessary if you if you just want to use it for pleasure, then
Unnecessary.
whatever. But if
Okay, but then you can't say that sex is only for procreation.
like I said, it's a lot of things that people use for pleasure that they're not really supposed to do.
But that's
So
what
really,
that's what I'm calling you a hypocrite because you're saying that sex is only for sex is only for procreation, but yet you have all of these what's the word, exceptions. So is it sex is only for procreation, or can sex be for multiple things?
I said it's not about I have exceptions. I just say as it is. Like no, you're not really supposed to have sex if you don't procreate. You're not like no, it's pointless in my opinion.
Okay,
All
so
right.
in your opinion, that's in your opinion. You can't, but you had stated before that that's what sex is. Period. That was
Yes, yes, that is. Period. Pretty much. It's more. It's like it's nothing really more to that. Then is the only thing is it's pleasure. That's all.
So, okay, so is it your opinion and for you and your lifestyle, or is
No,
it?
not my lifestyle. I would say it's more. I would say I would lean it more to facts, but I got to look more into it. Honestly, I will lean it more to facts. I won't say it's a fact, but I will lean it more to that.
All right. Well,
I would say it's more of
I
a
would
different
definitely
thing.
encourage you to do some more study on this. It doesn't seem like you've given a good I guess opinion on your side on your stance, but you haven't been able to back that up with any actual facts or data or evidence. So I would definitely
I
say
agree.
go do some study on that, and you're welcome to come back and talk about it later.
You can also
But
think of the questions that we were asking about, if a woman had menopause because they wouldn't be able to procreate, or preacher's question was a great question if the man was infertile, so or even the woman infertile, or would they be able to have sex in your view?
Like I said, it's unnecessary. It's no point to do it if it's not for procreation. It's unnecessary. That's just a waste of semen, really.
all right.
But I
Well,
mean, eh.
thank you for that. I am going to move
All
on
right.
to the next guest because I told them I would get them up here soon.
Oh, that's fine. I'm going to jump down. I just had that question because he was being very hypocritical in my view.
Yeah, there was a lot of back
Or
and
rather,
forth.
contradicting.
Yeah, thank you for coming
So,
up. I appreciate
thanks,
it.
Preacher.
Yeah,
No
have a good
problem.
day. Hey, Tony, how are you?
I'm fine, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Are you over the age of 18, and are you a Christian or a
Fine,
Bible
buddy. How
believer?
you doing?
Oh man.
All right. Are you
Uh,
over the age of 18
Tony,
and are
you
you?
have an echo.
Yes, let me drop because I think I got an echo. Are you over
Yeah.
the age of 18?
Go ahead and drop. Come back up. We'll see if that fixes it. All right. Let's see. Let's see. All right, everyone. Fingers crossed. Technology works with us. All right. Hello.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Yeah, we got it. All right.
Yeah,
Are
it's
you over
been a
the age
while
of
since I've had
18,
an
and
echo.
are you a Christian or a Bible believer?
Yes and no.
Yes and no. All right. What would you like
I've,
to say?
I just I just wanted to add to this conversation. Have you talked about the relationship between David and Jonathan, and the time when Jesus got caught with a young man that had only a sheet on, but was unclothed inside? Like they could see that he was unclothed because it's written there that he took off for the sheet, and I think the sheet uh, didn't cover much.
Yeah, I haven't really touched on the Jesus thing much, but I've definitely touched on David and Jonathan. I know that Deborah on here wrote a book called, I believe it's called Crucifying the Bible, and she has a whole chapter on there of the bisexual king, aka David, and all of the scripture that points to the evidence that David and Jonathan were definitely very, very close. You know, they were more than roommates. Hey, Biblical, how are you?
Which is a lovely story, but they forget that that's in there. That the scripture doesn't what would you call it, vilify that kind of love until later on when men did it. But thank you for what you're doing. I'll keep listening. I
Yeah,
just wanted to
thank you.
come in and then thank you for your service to humanity.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you and your time coming up here. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Have a great you too, man. Bye.
Well, that was nice. Yeah. Hey, Biblical, how are you doing? I haven't seen you in a minute. Um, I think I saw you on a live recently, but when I joined it, I was just so tired. I think I fell asleep really quickly. So, um, yeah. So I've had a couple of pretty interesting conversations recently. I recently earlier today just heard the debate with No Degree and Vizzy on Coco's Live, and there are a couple other debates that happened last night that I missed that I would like to get the chance to see. Um, I know that there's a part in there that was addressed about Vizzy asked No Degree if what was it? If God told you to essay someone, would you? And No Degree was like, well, God would never say that. God would never say that. I want to clip that and probably address it in my own video about how in what was it, 2 Samuel chapters 12 and 16, we see exactly that. We see God cursing that kind of violence to take place on a whole group of women, and then someone who then later speaks for God gives the counsel that leads to that action. I changed jobs back in February, so my lifetime has been. Oh man, I see. Yeah, job changes fuck with your schedule like that. I get it. But yeah, so I want to talk about how we do see God very directly causing the assault of women to happen, and then also pointing out things like Deuteronomy 21, when they can take female captives of war and go ahead and make them quote unquote wives and use them for sex and stuff like that, and if they don't like them, kick them out. Captives cannot consent. That's the whole thing there. So this is all done against their will as well. And then, of course, seeing things like at the very end of Deuteronomy 22, 28, and 29, we see multiple examples of God in his law allowing rape and causing it to happen. Right? I agree, Ken. I, too, hate when my job takes up personal time. It's just so unfair, right? So I work at a donut shop, okay? I make donuts all day and all night. It's ridiculous. But yesterday, I don't know. I work nights, so all my days are blurred. Yesterday was National Donut Day. And let me tell you, that was busy as fuck. It was too much. There was just so much happening. And of course, I had to do a huge chunk of the production myself. But you know what? It's okay. Well, not the production, but the actual making and distributing of them via orders and stuff like that. We had hundreds of dozens of orders. Now that really cut into my personal time, let me tell you. Anyway, so Genesis, that whole thing with Greg at the beginning was crazy. He still didn't give us an answer of why homosexuality is wrong. From a biblical standpoint, I just don't see it. I asked somebody, I went on a Christian Live where they were having this conversation about homosexuality and if the acting on it is a sin. And I went up there and I asked them, hey, why would homosexuality be a sin? And even if it is, so what? And basically the answer they gave me was, God doesn't need a reason to say that it's wrong. It's just wrong. And yet, when they asked me about how I justify things in my system, and I gave them what my morality is based on and how the framework of that goes, they tell me, oh, you don't actually have a valid justification, and then they laughed at me for quote-unquote not having a valid justification, but then turned around and said they don't need a justification at all to say that homosexuality is wrong and is worthy of the death penalty. So that was incredibly hypocritical on their part. It made absolutely no sense. I can never really get a clear answer from a believer about this specific type of question. Even like, the hate pastors like Steven Anderson, they just scream, oh, it's gross, oh, it's this, oh, it's that. Okay, no. That's your opinion. But show it with the facts, show it with the data, show it with the evidence. Yeah, exactly. Hey, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, man?
Oh, it's not too bad. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right, bro.
Good, good. Are you over the age of 18 and are you a Christian or Bible believer?
Yeah, I'm a Christian and I'm over the age of 18.
Perfect, perfect. And what on the background would you like to talk about?
Uh, let me see here. Okay. I mean, what good is blind faith, and why does God want it from us? That's a good one.
Okay, yeah, sure. Why does God value blind faith? Why does he want us to exercise it when it comes to him?
Well, the faith that we follow within the Christian narrative is not blind as like the way I think you think it is. Like simply stating that is true is enough. It's more of a lifestyle that you experience as you mature into what it teaches.
So what I mean by blind faith is believing something without the valid evidence or data to support it.
Well, what would you consider valid data?
Something that shows whether the proposition is true or not. So, for example, um, when in a modern sense, when the doctor comes out and says that your loved one is not doing too well, you need to prepare yourself. They're not sure they're going to make it through this operation, and you say, "No, I know that they're going to make it. They're a fighter. I believe that they're going to wake up after this." And that is something that you believe despite all the evidence and data to the contrary. That is an example of blind faith. You are believing something even though there is nothing to support you.
Well, the relationship that you have with that person, that would be you don't consider that as evidence?
I don't think that the relationship you have with any person can determine whether or not they're going to live through a surgery.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, but there has been circumstances where that kind of faith has been proven to be true, right?
Like when?
Like in that type of situation, the exact situation that you're talking about, where the husband or wife has has that type of faith that their husband or wife will get better, even though the medical professionals say otherwise, and the husband or wife gets better, and that would be enough evidence to justify your faith, wouldn't it?
No, no, it would not, because sometimes people make it through, and the faith that the person holds differs and is completely changing from person to person, culture to culture. So clearly, it makes more of a natural sense to say that sometimes people do make it through, and sometimes they don't, and there is no supernatural force behind it. Because then we would have to admit that all the gods are real, and all the magic is real, and all the tarot card readings are real, and all of these things are real. And then all that is contradictory, so logically that can't make sense.
Well, we do hold within the Christian narrative that all those things are real, but they work. They're not real in the sense of what is true and good. They worked against that. Like
As a
we
Christian,
like
you believe in Zeus and Odin and Hecate.
yeah, we do. We consider them
Interesting.
false gods, though. We consider them demons.
Okay, so you don't actually believe in them as gods. You think that they are demons masquerading as gods.
Correct.
Okay, so you don't think of them the same. You think of them as different. What I'm saying is that if we took the faith of a Christian and said, well, they made it through the surgery, that means the faith of the Christian is valid, then the person who is doing sacrifices to Zeus and to Odin for their loved one and their loved one makes it through, we would then have to say that Zeus and Odin are also the gods that are taking care of these people. Because if you can just say, no, that's not true, they're demons, we can turn around and say, well, your god is actually just a demon. It's not really a god. It seems like there is no actual way that you can pinpoint that what you are trying to back it as is true. So again, we're either coming down to a bunch of contradictions, or we need to admit that just because someone made it through does not mean that we can say that the faith was valid.
I mean, I would say there's a difference between you having.
I'm sorry, you cut out. I can't hear you. If you're away from the screen, I can't hear you, but you probably got a call. Here, we'll just wait a moment and let's see if everything's all right. I guess not. Maybe he'll come back. Yeah, I agree. It's a lot of flip flopping. It's a lot of back and forth. But yeah. So how can we know that the resurrection of Jesus is actually a true event? I think it's very interesting how little Christians want to touch on that. It's supposed to be like the biggest thing in Christianity, and yet they'd rather talk about slavery or gay people than they would the resurrection. I was actually very surprised that this guest chose the blind faith one, because not many people choose that one or the resurrection of Jesus. Which I feel like if it were me, I would definitely want to touch on the resurrection of Jesus as, the justification for my faith, as we see in 1 Corinthians 15. If the resurrection of Jesus did not happen, then your faith is in vain. So being able to show that the resurrection of Jesus is a true event is very vital to being able to justify the rest of your faith, that the faith that you have in Christianity is built on solid ground, and that solid ground is the facts and data that can back up the resurrection of Jesus Christ. But yet we don't really get anything like that. The best things that I have heard are the Shroud of Turin, which, if you have done any study on the Shroud of Turin, you would know that there is absolutely no scientific data or evidence or historical backing to show that this ever belonged to Jesus, or that what happened actually is only possible via a supernatural resurrection. These are just assumptions that are being made from the things they can tell about the cloth and what they think it fits in with their own theology. That in itself shows, at least to me, that you cannot say the Shroud of Turin is evidence for Jesus' resurrection. I don't think one had to be true. It is possible that one is true, but it is also possible that none of them are true. But yes, you're right. They all have very similar stories. It's very fascinating to go through history of different cultures, of different beliefs and stuff, and just see pretty much the same story, just in different variation. People beyond us is an interesting thing. I could see it more as like some kind of supernatural or like extraterrestrial type of situation, maybe, but I don't know. They're all cool theories, but what can we really say more than that? All right, guys. Maybe we'll hit a reset. Maybe we can get back into the algorithm that way by doing a reset. We tried having a couple conversations, and unfortunately, they didn't really last too long. But maybe if we go again, maybe we'll do something a little bit more broader of a topic. You know what? Let's try a different, broader topic first, and then we'll see what we can do. So just something simply like this. Why should I be a Christian? Why should I believe in this book, and why should it be followed? These are all questions that I feel like I haven't gotten solid answers to. Mostly it's, oh well, it's true because God said so. The Bible says so. I can't fall for this circular logic, and then trying to say things like, well, creation is evidence of God, but then failing to give the evidence that nature is in some way a creation, is a stumbling block for me, because, well, then we've just hit another dead end. So there's so many things that we can point to, I think, in the Bible and say, oh look, that person was a real person, that place was a real place, but that doesn't in any way mean that the rest of it is true, especially all the supernatural things in there. And that's honestly the stuff that matters the most. So I think it's great to learn a lot of religions and the differences between them and the similarities between them. Lots of religions follow very similar themes or go through similar stories, just, more modernized for that culture in that time period to fit in with their customs and their traditions. Like even just the flood story, there are many adaptations of the flood story. Most popular, aside from Noah's Ark, is the Epic of Gilgamesh. Um, so even something just as simple as that, and all the way in the beginning of the Bible, there are already other alterations and other stories of these stories. The creation story. There's so many religions and beliefs that have a creation mythology, and yet I hear from Christians all the time, well, that's not true. Only Christianity can explain how the world was made. No, Christianity has a creation myth just like many other religions do. But we see lots of people saying otherwise. Hey, Queen, have you ever seen a film or a Bible tract called A Letter from Hell? I've been thinking of doing a video on this, but I was thinking about maybe having a friendly join me for it. This was something that was shown to me when I was a child, and shown to everyone in my grade because I went to a Christian school. It was shown to my church. Hey, God, welcome. It was shown to my church at youth group and stuff like that. And so this film called A Letter from Hell is basically a awesome. Yeah, I would love to watch it with you and maybe get your thoughts on it. It's a whole thing, I think, with child indoctrination, with scaring especially kids to spread the gospel, because the whole message is there are these two friends, and basically one of them dies, the non-Christian of them, one dies and goes to hell. And when they're in hell, they manage to write a letter which somehow gets delivered to the land of the living, to their living friend, their living Christian friend. And basically the letter is like, hey, I'm in hell, I'm in torture, this is torment, this is the judgment, situation that I faced, I was so scared, I'm alone, I'm in pain, and it's all your fault. It's all your fault because you were a Christian and you could have saved me from this if you had cared enough to tell me about Jesus. And it was shown to me so many times in my youth. And it scared the shit out of me. It scared the shit out of lots of kids, and it caused a big ripple of, everyone going out and telling each other, like, you're really a Christian, right? You're really a Christian, right? Because I love you, I don't want you to go to hell. And then going and telling all your non-Christian friends, you have to be a Christian. And, causing 10, 11, 12, 13-year-olds to lose friendships over this because you became this crazy religious nut for 4 or 5 days because your church showed you this scary-ass fucking thing. But yeah, hey.
Oh my God. I'm going to have to watch this.
Yeah, I'll send you the link afterwards. But I was thinking it'd be really cool to maybe get like 1 or 2 people together and like go through the video, watch it together, and well, we don't really even have to watch it. It's literally an audio, but just like listen to it and talk about it. Just because like it was, as from a kid perspective, I thought that this was a big important thing. A Christian kid being told like, yeah, this is the seriousness of what we're growing up in. This is how important it is to save souls. And now looking back on it as an adult and not in the same lens as I am now, I can see the amount of damage that it causes and how horrible they are. And I've been doing a lot of thought about my Christian indoctrination and upbringing lately, and seeing a lot of the manipulation and damage that was in there that I, even to this day, am still, understanding.
Yeah, because I mean, even like I said in the chat, even from like a psychological perspective, it can be incredibly damaging because that amount of fear to put into a child, it's almost like they would be afraid to do anything because they might go to this hell and suffer. But also in the fact of the intense guilt somebody would feel if they received a letter from hell from a friend stating that you're the reason why I'm here. And I just it's absolutely disgusting to me.
No,
to put
honestly,
that.
yeah, it's crazy putting all that on a child. The very first time that I thought, okay, maybe parents shouldn't really teach their kids their religious beliefs. Um, I was like 23, 24 years old, and I listened to the audiobook of Richard Dawkins' The God Delusion. It was like the very first book that I ever listened to by an atheist. Um, and I remember because I was at work in a walk-in fridge, and I had to like stop and really process what I was thinking and understanding it, because there's one chapter where he talks about receiving a letter from this woman who says that when she was a child, her priest molested her, and around the same time that this was happening, this abuse, her best friend died in a car accident. And granted, she was a child, and she talked about how she would lay in bed at night, crying and praying and begging God for hours and hours that her friend's soul was not in hell, begging for her friend's soul to be at peace, begging for her to be in heaven with God, and that all that fear and guilt of hell overpowered anything that she felt about her being abused, that she just let that continue without reporting it and stuff like that, because the adults in her life conditioned her to care so much more about this, that they didn't even bother to teach her, hey, if this is happening to you, please tell us. And how that harmed her and how that damaged her throughout her life. And I just remember thinking, like, yeah, I remember how hell was to me as a kid, and growing up in it and truly believing in it, and how scary it could be, thinking that your loved ones could be there. And I could definitely recognize the damage that does, especially to a child.
Right. And, that whenever I talk about, or at least confront Christians in different kinds of conversations, and I talk a lot about coercion and how abusive it is, and how very damaging is coercing somebody into a behavior that you want is also not could, but is also very controlling. And I'm not sure if you've ever like came to my lives, but I do a lot of mental health and parenting lives, trying to change
Yes, yes,
perspectives on
I've
how
heard your
to
lives. They're
parent
really
better.
good.
Thank you. Um, and we kind of do go over the coercion aspect of it, because that's what a lot of parents do, like stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about, or yelling at them, or stuff like that, or spanking and whatnot. And it's just it is very damaging to a child, because they grow up with that fear, and that fear actually turns to something else. It turns to anger. You get angry very easily. You're not very socially, excuse me, you're not very emotionally regulated. And I can see a lot of or you're just too afraid to show an emotion or connect with people in that deeper level. So when we talk about, religion, and not even just Christianity, but religion as a whole, it's very coercive, just to get people to believe. Now, I think that if it wasn't coercive and you are believing because you absolutely just love a god or love a higher power or something like that, and it's just because you want to feel like you belong, or something like that, and not because of the fear of being tortured for the rest of eternity. I would support that, but I don't support religions that have this coercive aspect to it, because it's just so damaging to a human being. I know that was a lot. Sorry.
No, you're good, and I agree, and especially very damaging in those formative years. But also just like looking back and like thinking about the intention behind it, showing something like this to kids with the intention that these children are gonna go and spread this fear to other children, because they're not going and telling, like their friends' parents, oh, you know what I found out about God and theology and stuff like that. No, they're going to go and tell their other 7-year-old friend, their other 10-year-old friend, you don't want to go to hell. I don't want you to go to hell. and then it's this, foot in the door of trying to indoctrinate someone else's kids, which Christians are so against that someone does to their kids, yet they do all these tactics to try to ensure that their kids do it to others.
And I totally get that because even my own child was kind of caught in that almost indoctrination because and thank goodness I have a great relationship with my child where he's okay with asking me questions. Um, because he did ask me one day that like he asked me if he was going to hell because if I no actually he said if I don't believe in God then I'm going to hell, and I'm like, where did you hear that? And he was telling me that kids at school were telling him that, and I said, no honey, you're not going to go to hell for not believing in God if you don't want to believe in God. I said, that's really not how any of that works, but I would rather you learn about that later on in life if, and we can talk about that a little more if you want to, when we get home because we were in the car. But to go back to your point, like it's very much in our kids' social circles, and my kid's 10. So like it kind of, and trust me, when I got home, I was infuriated in that moment. But when I got home, like I called up his dad, and I'm just like not screaming, but like I had to go into another room going, I can't believe these blank blank kids. And I was so angry because it's like, how dare you put this imaginary fear into, not imaginary fear, but like this fear of this imaginary place into my child. How dare you? And it was just I was so mad.
Yeah, no, and I can definitely understand that rage and stuff now as an adult. Sadly, though, as a child, I was one of those children telling your kids about it. But I know better now. I understand the error of my ways now. Um,
Right. And I wasn't mad at the kids, right? You can't be
yeah,
mad at kids because, they have parents that are shitty. Um, I was very, I don't even know what I was really mad at. I think I was just more mad because I don't know that whole situation. It could have been just, that they go to church with their parents and their parents are very good people and not telling their kids to, spread the word or whatnot. It could be that. It could also be that they did tell their kids to spread the word. But like I'm not even mad at the parents, I'm not mad at the kids, I'm just mad at this whole concept of Christianity and the facts of this fear driven religion to be good and kind. And it doesn't make sense to me why you need a book to tell you how to be a good person when it's so easy to just be kind to people. I don't understand it. I do, but I don't at the same time. It's frustrating.
no, I completely understand and agree with that. But yeah, there's just a whole lot I've been thinking about of like the indoctrination I had when I was younger, and like there's still some things even now today that like I look back on with like nostalgia, even though I recognize how indoctrinating it was. I still love the Adventures in Odyssey series that I listened to when I was a kid, and I know lots of people that have deconstructed also still remain loving the characters from things like Adventures in Odyssey and a few other of like the very popular kids drama shows and stuff like that. But even there are even some things from there when I re-listen to them as an adult, like they give warnings, in front of some of them, like, oh, like parents, listen with your kids, we want to make sure everything's fine, blah blah. But like I'm like, man, I would never let my kid listen to something like this because it says it's teaching some things that are pretty shitty, like not all of it is like, oh, love your neighbor, God wants you to be nice to people. Sometimes it really goes on, for a target audience of children, as young as 5-6 years old, their Mortal Coil series, where you thought that two of your favorite characters were going to die, and what does that mean? And one of them has an experience in like the simulator called the Imagination Station, where he went to hell, and the way that it damaged him and hurt him and stuff like that. But it's okay because at the end he got saved. Just putting that in a dramatized form for kids, I can understand how that leaves a very deep and lasting imprint on them.
And I agree. I don't think a movie like that would be beneficial at all to a kid that young. I'm not one to hold back media in any way from my kid, who's 10 now, because there are some things that I won't show him, but there are other things that, like, it depends on how well I know he will perceive this. Or, hey, let's watch this together, and then we'll talk about it, right? We'll talk about it. I'll ask, like, I'm a huge one for asking my son questions, and he's like, Mom, you're driving me crazy, and I'm like, I'm sorry, but having a conversation with your kid about movies like that, I think, is definitely the way to go. I do hold some relevance to when you said that you still like you still like the things that you grew up with, when it comes to the religious part of you, and I totally get that. I can't watch a Star Wars movie without saying, like, when they say "May the Force be with you," I always say, "And also with you." And there are certain
That's pretty
aspects.
funny.
Yeah, like every single time. There's no, it's in my head. It's either I say it out loud or I say it in my head. It always is there. But there are aspects where I do look back, because I was raised Catholic, obviously. And I do miss some of the things about church. I do, like, I miss the hymns and just the energy in there. When it comes to, like, yeah, I mean, I totally get it, and that's completely valid, I would say, to kind of have a little bit of nostalgia and still like those things. Like, for another thing is, I like Skillet. Skillet's a Christian, so I love them. They're amazing. I love Disturbed as well. I believe he's Christian, the lead singer. So I think it's okay to like these things. Yeah, so I think that's valid.
Yeah, I completely understand why, especially being such a big staple of, like your life growing up and stuff like that. I can definitely understand why, just because you don't believe the same anymore, why, a lot of that nostalgia still wouldn't be there. And the very first time that I heard Skillet, I was at church camp. And it was the first time that I had heard Christian music like that. And I was like, well, this isn't Christian. What the heck is this?
Yeah,
especially
right.
because, like, the first one I heard was Monster, which is not in any way, on its surface, something that you could be like, yeah, this is worshiping Jesus, man. But as an adult, and having left the church and having left Christianity, it's wild to me how many of my secular friends do not know that Skillet is a Christian band. And I just have so much fun telling people and be like, they're Christian, right? And them being like, no, they're not. Yes, they are. No, they're not. Have you heard their songs? And it's like, yeah, have you heard their songs? Like, everything that you've heard and thought about, like, them singing to a loved one, think about it as a worship song to God. And you can just see it on their face going like, oh. And it's like, yeah, like, if you go to a concert of theirs, they pray. They are very open in their concerts who they are. Just you wouldn't really know that just by listening to some of their music. And I just think it's pretty funny.
Oh, I think it's hilarious too. I actually kind of was one of those people who didn't know they were a Christian band until someone told me. And I was just like, really? Holy, I still like them. I don't care. I still like them. I don't care if they're Christian. Because I feel like it just takes a different spin to it. to kind of go back to where this all began is like the audio clip. I would love to kind of to be up here with you and maybe another friendly and kind of dissect it and give our opinions to the clip, because I love doing that. And
Yeah,
it'd be
I
just very
just found it.
interesting.
It's a 7.5 minute video, so I'll send that to you right afterwards. And yeah, I'm trying. I think it'd be fun to like go through it with you and maybe someone else, and we can play certain parts, think about it, like talk about it and stuff. It's very specific things. There are lots of things that are said in here that I think are problematic, both matching the theology, but also the repercussions that it could have on, again, the target audience being high school and younger.
Children.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's it would just be very interesting to kind of dissect that and have this big I love it. I would love it. It would be amazing, I think.
Well, awesome. I'm glad that you like that idea. And also, have you seen the Lifehouse Everything skit that lots of churches put on?
No, I haven't. I haven't really been going into lives lately, any deconstructing or anything lives, or
Got you.
in that, yeah.
Well, this is something that went around a lot of churches when I was still in church, and it was a skit that this one group did, and lots of churches then copied, where there's someone, typically a woman, who is dressed in this like black shirt and or black outfit, and Jesus is there, and it's kind of like think of it like an interpretive dance or something like that. And so her and Jesus are like dancing together and showing like their unison, and they're going together. But then she gets kind of pulled away from Jesus by a boyfriend, some guy with a rose, and then like some friends that want to drink and party, and then all of a sudden she's hurting herself, and all of a sudden she's trying to unalive herself, and all these things. And then it shows how at the end she runs back to Jesus, and how Jesus liberates her from all of this stuff.
Oh my God, that is so manipulative.
Yeah, and then they go back to this unison and stuff like that. But very specifically, when she's trying to go back to Jesus, when she's trying to run back to him, all of the distractions and the evil, friends and stuff like that, and that, took her away from Jesus, like, try to attack her, literally, like, are pulling her down to the ground and stuff like that. And it isn't until Jesus reaches out, grabs her, and pulls her out that her black outfit is ripped off, showing this beautiful white outfit underneath, so that when he saves her, she's, in this beautiful white unison again with Jesus.
Oh my God. That's just, yeah, that's just, like I said, that's just manipulative. That is so manipulative, because it's stating that, like, anyone who doesn't follow Jesus or doesn't believe in Jesus, doesn't believe in God, are evil. And to be quite frank, the kindest people I have ever met were atheists, or they were pagan, at least. I feel like that the kindest, most accepting people, yeah, were not Christians at all. And it just, that kind of stuff really puts blinders on you, because then you won't see people for actually who they are, and you'll only judge them because they don't believe in Jesus, or if they do believe in Jesus. I find it just so manipulative. Oh my God.
Yeah, I like what you said about the blinders and stuff on there, because I think what this skit did, especially for a lot of kids that saw this in youth group and stuff, over and over and over again, and a lot of youth groups, like I said, redid it. A lot of churches redid it with their own people, so they were a part of this as well, literally doing these actions, like playing Jesus and playing the girl and playing, the sins and stuff. But, the whole showing of, oh, it starts off with a boy, And then the next thing you know, you're trying to unalive yourself. And look at all the disaster that you went through in between. These people that came to you and, said, oh, have a fun time with me. Look at how they just destroyed you. And it's really trying to keep you on. Don't even try to give these other people a chance. You need to just focus on this one thing.
I agree. I want to add also a different perspective. Again, I talk about mental health, right? And even parenting. And I can see this whole situation going incredibly wrong in that aspect as well, because if your child is not following God or Jesus, and they're having boyfriends and they're going out with friends and having fun, etc., and the parents, which I have heard, I don't know how many stories of kids coming from Christian households where they make mistakes and they're completely shunned and shamed, right, for their choices, instead of accepting and actually communicative. But that kind of parenting then leads to mental health issues. That's what gets them to cut and to harm themselves and to do all of this other stuff. That's what gets kids to do that, because you're not being a parent. You're being a dictator. And a parent is somebody who loves their child, who communicates to their child, who guides their child, not dictates and tries to control their child. So when you try to control your child, they rebel. That's the natural feeling. And well, not that, I shouldn't say that, but that's a lot of the times what happens is they rebel, and then you shame them, and then what happens, depending on the person and what their brain chemistry is and how they process, is what they're going to do next. And a lot of kids start to harm themselves, or they'll start to think of unaliving themselves, and it goes into that, not the fact that they turned away from Jesus. And I find that very dangerous rhetoric, and that play or skit very, very dangerous, because it also ignores mental health issues and also puts the blame on the person that's doing that's hurting themselves. It's not their fault that they're hurting themselves. Look inward. And
No,
that's
you're
what
right.
that's
The parent is not a thought in this skit at all. It's just all the responsibility is on this child and their relationship with Jesus, and how it's their fault that they walked away from him. There is no parent even consideration in the skit.
And I've been thinking about this too. It's like, it's also not 100% parents' fault either. It's like it is, but it isn't, because as a parent, you should be guiding and talking to your kids, and asking them questions and learning your kids, and not trying to control your kids. However, you're not the sole purpose, or the sole teacher, I guess you can say, the sole teacher in your kid's life. So there'll be peers, there'll be teachers, there will be other parents, there'll be so many other influences and that will guide your kid into different aspects of their life. But a job as a parent is to kind of watch out for that. And it's really hard to do as a parent speaking. Very, very hard to do, to kind of even stay 2 steps ahead. But you should be able to have conversations with your kid. When your kid stops if you've been having conversations with your kid and your kid stops having those conversations or answering you, something is wrong, and you need to get to the bottom of it. And it just, yeah. Just that skit is very annoyingly dangerous.
Yeah, I would agree. I'll send you that one too. But on that note, I do have to get going. I got to start getting ready for work. But I'll send you both these clips, and probably in a group with a couple of other people, and see if we can find a time to talk about them. Because yeah, I think that I think that these are things that, while they are old, they are things that they're still messages that are still being pushed, and they are still things that many of us grew up with this message in some way or another being taught to us in some way, and we know what the lasting effects of those can be. And I think that they are worthy of discussion still.
Oh, I definitely agree, and I want to thank you for considering me to be on that panel. I think also having different perspectives in, especially if it's you, me, and then somebody else, having those different perspectives really would help other people if they came across live and we're talking about this. Would help them, especially in the deconstructing community type feel. Yeah. So thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. As always, it was great talking with you, and I'll talk to you later.
You as well. Have a good day.
You too. Bye bye.